The phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m., jolting me awake on the couch where I'd fallen asleep watching late-night television. Derek Malone, 42 years old, logistics manager for a mid-sized shipping company, reduced to sleeping on furniture in his own apartment because his wife claimed I snored too loudly. Busy now. I'll call after, the text read. From Lexi, my wife of 8 years. I stared at the glowing screen, my mind instantly sharp despite the fog of cheap whiskey I'd been nursing. Busy at 3 a.m, on a Tuesday, when she'd supposedly gone to her friend Simone's place for a girls' night that apparently stretched well past midnight. My fingers moved before my brain could stop them. Don't bother. Stay with him. My line is closed to you. I hit send and turned off the phone. The silence that followed felt different from the usual quiet of our upscale Boston apartment. This wasn't the comfortable silence of a sleeping home. This was the heavy, pregnant pause before a storm breaks. I knew Lexi well enough to predict what would happen next. She'd panic, realize her mistake, and come running home with some elaborate explanation. Sure enough, 23 minutes later, I heard her key fumbling in the lock. Then came the frantic knocking when she realized I'd engaged the security chain. Derek, open up. I can explain everything. Her voice carried that particular pitch it got when she was caught in a lie. High and breathy, like a teenager who'd missed curfew. I stayed on the couch, remote in hand, watching her perfect composure crumble through the peephole. Lexi Malone, 38 years old, senior PR executive at Channing & Associates, always immaculately dressed and never without the right words. Except now she looked like she'd thrown on clothes in the dark. Her usually flawless blonde hair disheveled, mascara smudged under her eyes. Derek, please! It's not what you think. The classic line. I almost laughed. Instead, I pulled out my backup phone, an old device I kept for emergencies, and started recording. Her voice carried clearly through the thin door, every desperate word preserved for posterity. I know you're in there, your car's in the garage. Just let me explain. 20 minutes of this. 20 minutes of Lexi Malone, master manipulator and image consultant, reducing herself to begging through a door like a common cheater, which I supposed was exactly what she was. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. When she finally gave up and left, I had 43 minutes of audio documenting her meltdown. But more importantly, I had confirmation of what I'd suspected for months. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden interest in yoga classes that somehow never made her more flexible. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to Simone, Lexi's supposed best friend and confidant. The subject line read, "Thought you should know." The message was simple. Lexi's having an affair. Thought her best friend would want to know before everyone else finds out. She's been lying to both of us. I attached a screenshot of her text, just the timestamp and busy now, I'll call after, and hit send. Simone would read it in the morning, and being the gossip-hungry social media consultant she was, would immediately call Lexi for details. The best part? Lexi would have to explain not just the affair, but why she'd been using Simone as an alibi. My phone, the one I'd turned back on, started buzzing with texts. 17 messages from Lexi, each one more frantic than the last. I scrolled through them like reading a psychological thriller. Derek, I can explain. It's not what you think. Please just talk to me. You're being ridiculous. Fine, be childish. I'm staying at Simone's tonight. We need to talk like adults. You can't just shut me out. This is emotional abuse. That last one made me laugh out loud. Emotional abuse. Lexi had a talent for flipping scripts, making herself the victim in any situation. It's what made her so good at her job, and apparently so good at cheating. I poured myself another whiskey and settled in to wait. Tomorrow would bring the real fireworks. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. I'd slept surprisingly well for someone whose marriage had just imploded. Maybe it was the relief of finally knowing for certain what I'd suspected for months. My phone rang at 7:43 a.m. Mrs. Jarvis from 4B, the building's unofficial surveillance system. She was 72, widowed, and had nothing better to do than monitor the comings and goings of everyone in our building through her strategically positioned window. Derek, dear, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I saw that fancy car parked out front all night. The silver one with the loud engine? Same one that's been here 3 times this week while you were at work. Mrs. Jarvis had a way of delivering information that made it sound like casual conversation, but I knew better. She'd been watching, documenting, probably taking notes. God bless nosy neighbors. What kind of car, Mrs. Jarvis? One of those expensive ones. Tesla, I think. License plate starts with ETB. I wrote it down because, well, you never know when these things might be important. ETB. Ethan Brand. I'd heard Lexi mention him in passing, some venture capitalist she'd met through work. Apparently, their professional relationship had become significantly more personal. Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. I appreciate you looking out for me. Of course, dear. We neighbors have to stick together. I hung up and immediately called my friend Cal at Murphy's Tavern, the dive bar where I'd been spending more evenings lately. Cal was an ex-cop turned bartender, the kind of guy who'd seen everything twice and had opinions about all of it. Cal, it's Derek. You free for lunch? I need advice. Sure thing. But if this is about Lexi, I already told you she was trouble. You were right. I'll fill you in later. By the time I got to Murphy's at noon, my phone had collected 6 more frantic texts from Lexi and 2 missed calls from Simone. The gossip network was already churning. Cal was wiping down glasses behind the bar, his graying hair pulled back in a ponytail that made him look more like an aging rock star than a former Boston PD detective. The lunch crowd was thin, a few construction workers and office drones looking for liquid courage to get through the afternoon. So, Cal said, sliding a beer across the bar without being asked. She finally got caught? I told him everything. The text, the confrontation at the door, Mrs. Jarvis and her intelligence gathering, the mysterious Ethan Brand with his Tesla and his expensive tastes. Cal listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of acknowledgement. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. What do you want, Derek? You want closure or you want payback? Why not both? Cal smiled, the expression not entirely pleasant. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Tell me about this Ethan character. I pulled out my phone and did a quick search. Ethan Brand wasn't hard to find. He was the kind of guy who made sure his name appeared in search results. LinkedIn showed him as a managing partner at Apex Ventures, specializing in disruptive technology investments. His company photo showed a man in his mid-30s with perfectly styled dark hair and the kind of confident smile that suggested he'd never been told no. Looks like a real winner, Cal said, studying the photo. Let me guess, expensive suits, drives fast cars, talks about changing the world? That's the type Lexi always admired. And now she's got one. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I stared at my reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Derek Malone, logistics coordinator, ex-Army supply sergeant, the guy who made sure things got where they needed to go on time and under budget. Not flashy, not exciting, but reliable, steady, boring. Maybe it was time to be something else. I'm going to remind them both why underestimating people is a mistake. Cal's grin widened. Now you're talking. But we do this smart, understand? No criminal nonsense, no property damage, nothing that gets you arrested. We use their own weaknesses against them. What do you have in mind? First, we gather intelligence. Know your enemy, right? You still have access to the shared calendar? I nodded. Lexi and I had linked our Google calendars years ago for coordination. She'd probably forgotten about it. Good. Track her movements, figure out their pattern. Meanwhile, I'll do some digging on Mr. Brand. Guy like that, flashy lifestyle, there's always something. Unpaid debts, angry ex-partners, skeletons in closets. What about Simone? What about her? She's been covering for Lexi, providing alibis, probably giving advice. She's not innocent in this. Cal nodded approvingly. Good thinking. Never ignore the accomplices. They're usually the weak link. My phone buzzed with another text from Lexi. Derek, we need to talk. I'm coming home at 5. I showed Cal the message. Perfect, he said. Time to send a message of your own. I got home at 4:30, giving myself time to prepare. The apartment felt different now, less like a home and more like a battlefield. I'd spent 8 years building a life in these rooms with Lexi, and now I was preparing to tear it all down. The shared calendar had been illuminating. 3 weeks of yoga classes that corresponded perfectly with gaps in Ethan's schedule. Girls' nights that happened when he was free. Even a supposed work conference in Hartford that matched his weekend trip to the same city. They hadn't even been creative about it. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a stack of printouts when Lexi's key turned in the lock. She entered cautiously, like she was approaching a dangerous animal. Derek, are you here? Kitchen. She appeared in the doorway, and I had to admit she'd recovered her composure since last night. Hair perfect, makeup flawless, wearing her Navy power suit that she saved for important meetings. She was dressed for battle. We need to talk, she said, taking the seat across from me. No, we don't. Derek, please. I know how this looks, but you're misunderstanding the situation. I slid one of the printouts across the table. Her calendar with all the suspicious appointments highlighted in yellow. Yoga class, I read aloud. Tuesday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Except your yoga studio closes at 8 on Tuesdays. I called to check. Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. I went for drinks after with some of the other students. Every time? For 3 weeks straight? I slid another paper across. Here's your credit card statement. No charges at any bars or restaurants on those nights. But there are charges at that expensive hotel downtown, the Meridian. Room service, mostly. Lexi stared at the papers like they might catch fire. You've been spying on me. I've been paying attention. There's a difference? She struggled for words. This is a violation of my privacy. Your privacy? I almost laughed. Lexi, you've been lying to me for months, using our joint accounts to pay for hotel rooms where you cheat on me, but I'm the one violating privacy? She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. You're right, you don't. I pulled out my phone and played the recording from last night. Her voice filled the kitchen, desperate and panicked. Derek, please, it's not what you think. 43 minutes, I said when it finished. 43 minutes of you begging me to let you explain. Funny how your story keeps changing. Lexi's mask finally slipped. The composed PR executive disappeared, replaced by something uglier. Fine. Yes, I'm seeing someone. Yes, it's serious. But can you blame me? Look at us, Derek. Look at what we've become. What we've become? Or what you've made us? You stopped trying years ago. You come home, drink beer, watch television. When's the last time we went anywhere exciting? When's the last time you surprised me with anything? When's the last time you came home before midnight? When's the last time you asked about my day instead of just complaining about yours? We stared at each other across the table. 8 years of marriage reduced to accusations and counter-accusations. I want a divorce, she said finally. Good, so do I. I'll be staying at Simone's until we can figure out the arrangements. Actually, I said, you might want to find somewhere else to stay. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the email I'd sent to Simone that morning, along with Simone's response. OMG, Derek. I had no idea. She told me she was working late. I can't believe she used me as an alibi. I'm so sorry. Lexi grabbed for the phone, but I pulled it back. Simone's not very happy with you right now. Something about being lied to and used. She's also wondering how many other people know about your affair since you were careless enough to get caught. You bastard. I'm just getting started. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. My lawyer will be in touch. Looking forward to it. Oh, and Lexi? She turned back. You might want to call Ethan. Let him know that his wife might be getting some interesting information soon. The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? ETB 847. Nice car. Mrs. Jarvis has been very helpful with details. Lexi left without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I poured myself a whiskey and called Cal. How'd it go? He asked. Phase 1 complete. She's panicking. Simone's turned against her, and she knows I have evidence. Good. I've got some interesting information about Mr. Brand. Want to meet tonight? Absolutely. Murphy's, 8 o'clock. And Derek. Yeah? Bring your appetite for revenge. We're just getting started. Murphy's Tavern at 8 p.m. was exactly what you'd expect from a dive bar in South Boston. Dim lighting, scarred wooden tables, the smell of stale beer and fried food hanging in the air like a comfortable blanket. The evening crowd was a mix of construction workers, office drones drowning their sorrows, and regulars who treated the place like their personal living room. Cal had claimed a corner booth in the back, away from the television and the louder conversations. He'd spread several papers across the table and had that satisfied look he got when a puzzle was coming together. You look pleased with yourself, I said, sliding into the opposite seat. I should be. Your boy Ethan is a walking disaster waiting to happen. Cal pushed a folder across the table. 3 hours of research, and I've got enough to keep us busy for weeks. I opened the folder and started reading. Financial records, business filings, news articles, social media screenshots. Cal had been thorough. Apex Ventures, Cal said, taking a sip of his beer. Sounds impressive, right? Except it's basically Ethan and 2 other guys playing with other people's money. They've had exactly 1 successful investment in 3 years, and that was mostly luck. How do you know all this? Public records, mostly. SEC filings, business registrations, court documents. Amazing what you can find if you know where to look. Cal tapped one of the papers. This is the interesting part. Ethan's been living way above his means. Expensive apartment, fancy car, high-end restaurants. His personal expenses are running about 3 times his declared income. So he's broke? Worse. He's broke but pretending to be rich. Classic pattern. Guys like this, they need the image more than they need financial stability. They'll leverage everything to maintain appearances. I studied a printout of Ethan's social media posts. Photos of expensive dinners, weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard, tickets to exclusive events. Every post carefully crafted to project success and affluence. There's more, Cal continued. He's married. Wife's name is Patricia, goes by Patty. They've been separated for 6 months, but haven't filed for divorce yet. She's living in their house in Brookline while he's renting that expensive downtown apartment. Separated but not divorced? Financial reasons, probably. Divorce would mean splitting assets, and from what I can tell, there aren't many assets to split. Just a lot of debt and obligations. This was getting better by the minute. What about his business partners? That's where it gets really interesting. Cal pulled out another set of papers. Marcus Webb and Jennifer Chen. Webb's a trust fund kid who's been bankrolling most of their investments. Chen's the technical expert, former Google employee with actual skills. Both of them are getting tired of Ethan's lifestyle and poor judgment. How do you know that? Webb filed a complaint with their accountant last month about unauthorized expenses. Chen's been updating her LinkedIn profile and taking meetings with other firms. The partnership's falling apart. I leaned back in the booth, processing the information. Ethan Brand wasn't the successful venture capitalist he pretended to be. He was a con man running on borrowed time and other people's money, and now he'd made the mistake of stealing my wife. What's the plan? I asked. Cal smiled. We're going to help him collapse faster. But first, we need to deal with the immediate problem. Which is? Lexi's going to try to control the narrative. She's a PR professional, remember? Right now, she's probably crafting a story that makes you the villain and her the victim. We need to get ahead of that. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom, Lexi's younger brother. Hey, Derek, can we talk? Lexi's really upset, and I think there might be some misunderstanding. I showed the message to Cal. Perfect timing, he said. Tom's always been the family mediator, right? Tries to keep everyone happy? Yeah, he's a real estate agent, specializes in conflict resolution. Probably thinks he can fix this with the right conversation. Text him back. Agree to meet, but make it public. Coffee shop, restaurant, somewhere with witnesses. I typed a response. Sure. How about lunch tomorrow at Cafe Luna on Newberry Street? Noon? Tom's reply came quickly. Perfect. Thanks for being reasonable about this. Reasonable, I muttered. Right. Cal gathered up the papers and slid them back into the folder. Take these home, study them. Tomorrow after you meet with Tom, we're going to pay Mr. Brand a visit. What kind of visit? The kind where we introduce ourselves properly. Let him know that actions have consequences. I finished my beer and stood up. Cal, I appreciate all this help, but why are you going so far for me? Cal was quiet for a moment, staring into his glass. I spent 20 years as a cop, Derek. 20 years watching people get away with things because they were smarter, richer, or better connected than their victims. Guys like Ethan, they think they can take whatever they want and never pay the price. And women like Lexi? She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Cal looked up at me. You're a good guy who got screwed over. Maybe it's time the good guy wins for once. I walked home through the drizzling rain, the folder tucked inside my jacket. The apartment felt empty without Lexi's presence, but it was a clean emptiness, like a wound that had finally been drained of poison. Tomorrow I would start the real work of taking my life back. Cafe Luna on Newberry Street was the kind of place that attracted young professionals and college students. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, the constant hiss of the espresso machine providing background noise. I arrived 15 minutes early and claimed a table near the window where I could watch the street. Tom showed up exactly at noon, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Lexi's younger brother was 34, with the same blonde hair and blue eyes, but where Lexi had inherited their mother's sharp features, Tom had gotten their father's softer jawline. He worked in real estate because he was good with people, non-threatening, trustworthy, the kind of guy you'd want handling your biggest investment. Derek, he said, extending his hand. Thanks for agreeing to meet. Tom. I shook his hand and gestured to the empty chair. Coffee? Sure. Black, no sugar. I flagged down a server and ordered for both of us. Tom fidgeted with his phone, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. So, I said when the coffee arrived, Lexi sent you to fix things? She's worried about you. We all are. Worried about me? Derek, come on. You changed the locks. You're not returning her calls. You sent some pretty harsh messages to her friends. This isn't like you. I sipped my coffee and studied Tom's face. He genuinely seemed to believe what he was saying, which meant Lexi had already started her campaign of misinformation. What exactly did she tell you happened? Tom shifted in his seat. She said you two had a fight, and now you're shutting her out completely. She thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown. A breakdown? Look, I know marriage is hard. Sarah and I went through a rough patch last year, but you can't just cut off all communication. That's not healthy. Tom, did Lexi mention why we had this fight? She said it was about work stress, maybe some financial pressure. She's been putting in long hours lately, and you've been feeling neglected. I almost laughed. Lexi had managed to turn her affair into a story about my neediness and her dedication to her career. It was masterfully done, just enough truth to be believable, just enough misdirection to avoid the real issue. She's been putting in long hours, I repeated. Is that what she called it? Derek, what are you getting at? I pulled out my phone and showed him the text that started everything. This came at 3:17 a.m. last Tuesday. Busy now? I'll call after. What kind of work keeps someone busy at 3 in the morning? Tom read the message, his face creasing with confusion. Maybe she was at the office? Big presentation or something? Her office building locks at midnight. Security guards do rounds every hour. I showed him another screenshot. Here's her location data from that night. She wasn't at the office, Tom. She was at the Meridian Hotel. The color slowly drained from Tom's face as the implications sank in. There's more, I continued, pulling up the calendar printouts. 3 months of late nights and work emergencies that all correspond to gaps in someone else's schedule, someone named Ethan Brand. Tom stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. Derek, I had no idea. Of course you didn't, because Lexi's very good at managing information. It's literally her job. I leaned forward. The question is, what are you going to do now that you know the truth? Tom was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the pedestrians walking past. Finally, he looked back at me. What do you want from me? I want you to stop being her messenger. Stop trying to fix something that can't be fixed, and stop letting her use you to gather information about me. What do you mean? Come on, Tom. How did Lexi know I'd been drinking more lately? How did she know about my work situation? We haven't had a real conversation in months, but somehow she knows details about my life. Tom's face went red. She was worried about you. She asked me to check in, make sure you were okay. And you reported back to her, told her about my schedule, my finances, my state of mind. You've been spying on me for months without realizing it. That's not... I was trying to help. You were helping her plan her exit strategy, gathering intelligence so she could position herself as the reasonable one when everything fell apart. Tom pushed his coffee away, untouched. This is all wrong. This isn't how families are supposed to work. You're right, it's not. But this is what your sister chose. I stood up and dropped a $10 bill on the table. Tom, I don't blame you. You got manipulated just like everyone else. But it stops now. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth, starting with Ethan's wife. Tom's eyes went wide. Derek, don't do anything you'll regret. The only thing I regret is not seeing this sooner. I left him sitting at the table, staring at the evidence of his sister's betrayal. My phone buzzed as I walked back to my car. A text from Cal. Ready for phase 2? I typed back. Let's go hunting. Ethan Brand's office was in one of those gleaming downtown towers that screamed success to anyone who didn't look too closely at the details. Apex Ventures occupied a small suite on the 23rd floor. Impressive address, modest footprint, the kind of setup that looked good on business cards, but suggested a company operating on appearances rather than substance. Cal and I had done our reconnaissance over the past 2 days. Ethan's routine was predictable. Arrive at the office around 10, long lunch meetings at expensive restaurants, back to the office by 3, usually gone by 6. His Tesla was parked in the same spot in the underground garage every day, level B2, space 247. You sure about this? Cal asked as we walked through the parking garage. The sound of our footsteps echoed off the concrete walls. He's been screwing my wife in hotel rooms paid for with my money. Yeah, I'm sure. We found the Tesla exactly where it was supposed to be. Silver Model S, license plate ETB847, probably worth more than I made in a year. The car was pristine, not a scratch or smudge anywhere, the kind of vehicle that was more status symbol than transportation. Nice ride, Cal said, walking around the car. Shame if something happened to it. Nothing criminal, remember? Who said anything about criminal? Cal pulled out his phone and called the parking enforcement division. Yes, I'd like to report an illegally parked vehicle, a silver Tesla, license ETB 847, blocking a fire lane in the Millennium Tower garage. He gave them the location and hung up. Fire lane? I asked. Look at the yellow paint on the curb. Faded, but still there. Technically, this whole row is supposed to be kept clear for emergency vehicles. 20 minutes later, a tow truck arrived. The driver was a heavy-set guy named Mickey who clearly knew Cal from his police days. Cal, you old bastard. What's the story here? Illegal parking, Mickey. Owner's been warned multiple times. Cal slipped him a 20. Make sure it gets impounded properly. Full paperwork, all the fees. You got it. We watched from across the garage as Mickey hooked up the Tesla and hauled it away. Getting it back would cost Ethan at least $300 and half a day dealing with bureaucracy. Phase 1 complete, Cal said. Now for the fun part. We took the elevator to the 23rd floor. The Apex Ventures office was at the end of the hall, behind glass doors with the company logo etched in gold lettering. Through the windows, I could see a small reception area and 2 private offices beyond. Ethan was in the larger office, talking on the phone with his feet up on the desk. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of aggressive good looks that probably worked well on women who liked their men confident and slightly dangerous. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Mr. Brand? I knocked on the open door frame. He looked up, covering the phone with his hand. Yeah? Do we have an appointment? We need to talk. It's about Lexi Malone. The change in his expression was immediate, confidence replaced by wariness, the smile fading as he processed what I'd said. I'll call you back, he said into the phone, then hung up. And you are? Derek Malone, Lexi's husband. Cal stepped into the office behind me and closed the door. And I'm his friend Cal. We thought it was time we all got acquainted. Ethan stood up slowly, his hand moving toward the desk drawer. Gentlemen, I think there might be some misunderstanding here. No misunderstanding, I said, taking a seat in one of his expensive client chairs. You've been sleeping with my wife. I have hotel receipts, calendar entries, and about 43 minutes of audio of her panicking when she got caught. Pretty clear situation. Look, Derek, right? Whatever Lexi told you. She didn't tell me anything. She didn't have to. You two weren't exactly subtle about it. Cal remained standing by the door, arms crossed, looking like the ex-cop he was. Nice office, Ethan. Must be doing well for yourself. We do okay? Really? Because from what I hear, Apex Ventures is about 6 months away from bankruptcy. Your partners are looking for exits, your investors are asking hard questions, and you're personally leveraged up to your eyeballs. Ethan's face went pale. I don't know where you're getting your information, but... Public records, Cal said cheerfully. Amazing what you can learn when you know where to look. For instance, did you know your wife Patricia filed for legal separation last month? She's asking for half of everything, including the house in Brookline. That's personal business? So is sleeping with other men's wives, I said. But here we are. Ethan sat back down, some of the fight going out of him. What do you want? I want you to understand something, I said, leaning forward. Lexi isn't just some woman you picked up at a bar. She's my wife. We have a history, shared assets, mutual friends. When you decided to start an affair with her, you inserted yourself into my life without permission. It's not like that. We have feelings for each other. Feelings. I almost laughed. Ethan, you're broke. Your business is failing, your marriage is over, and you're living in an apartment you can't afford. Lexi represents stability to you, a way out of the mess you've made of your life. That's not true. Isn't it? When's the last time you paid for one of your hotel rooms? When's the last time you took her somewhere that didn't involve her credit card? Ethan's silence was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to stop seeing my wife. You're going to delete her number from your phone, and you're going to find someone else to solve your financial problems. And if I don't? Cal smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Then Derek here is going to have a conversation with your wife Patricia, and your business partners, and maybe a few of your investors. Amazing how quickly news travels in Boston's business community. Ethan looked back and forth between us, clearly trying to calculate his options. This is harassment. This is a friendly conversation between adults, I said, but it doesn't have to stay friendly. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Ethan's office number. That's probably your receptionist, Cal said, calling to tell you your car's been towed for illegal parking. Funny how these things work out. Ethan grabbed his desk phone and dialed. After a brief conversation, he slammed the receiver down. You had my car towed? The city had your car towed, I corrected, for violating parking regulations. We just happened to notice the violation and reported it. Civic duty and all that. This is insane. This is just the beginning. I stood up and straightened my jacket. Stay away from my wife, Ethan. This is the only warning you're going to get. Cal opened the door. Nice meeting you, Ethan. I'm sure we'll be seeing each other again soon. We left him sitting in his office, staring at his phone like it might explode. Think he'll listen? Cal asked as we waited for the elevator. Probably not. Guys like him don't learn until the consequences get personal. Good thing we're just getting started. The elevator doors opened, and we stepped inside. Through the glass walls of the office suite, I could see Ethan pacing back and forth, already reaching for his phone. He was probably calling Lexi right now, telling her about our visit, which was exactly what I wanted him to do. Let the games begin. 3 days later, everything came together at once. Lexi had been staying at a hotel since Simone refused to let her crash on the couch anymore. The friendship had ended badly, with Simone posting cryptic messages on social media about fake friends and people who use you for alibis. The gossip network that Lexi had spent years cultivating was turning against her. Ethan, meanwhile, had gotten his car back, but was dealing with new problems. Someone had sent his business partners detailed financial records showing his personal expenses charged to company accounts. Someone had also sent his estranged wife photographs of him entering and leaving the Meridian Hotel with a blonde woman who definitely wasn't her. That someone was me, with Cal's help. But the real masterpiece was still to come. I'd spent the morning setting up what I told everyone was a mediation meeting at the Harborview restaurant, a upscale place downtown with a private dining room that could accommodate about 20 people. I'd invited Lexi, Ethan, Tom, Simone, Ms. Channing from Lexi's office, and a few other mutual friends and colleagues. The invitation was simple. Let's discuss this situation like adults and find a way forward that works for everyone. What I didn't mention was that I'd also invited Patricia Brand, Ethan's wife, along with Marcus Webb and Jennifer Chen from Apex Ventures, and Mrs. Jarvis, who was thrilled to be included in what she called the neighborhood drama. The private dining room had a beautiful view of Boston Harbor and enough space for everyone to spread out. I'd arranged for appetizers and an open bar because I wanted everyone relaxed and comfortable when the truth came out. Lexi arrived first, wearing her best dress and her most confident smile. She'd clearly prepared for this like a business presentation, probably had talking points and strategies mapped out. "Derek," she said, kissing my cheek like we were still happily married. "I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this." Just trying to do the right thing. Ethan showed up 10 minutes later, looking nervous, but trying to project confidence. He shook my hand like we were old friends meeting for drinks. "Derek, I appreciate you setting this up. I think we can work something out that makes everyone happy." "I'm sure we can." The others filtered in over the next few minutes. Tom, still looking uncomfortable about the whole situation. Simone, who clearly didn't want to be there but was too curious to stay away. Ms. Channing, Lexi's boss, who'd agreed to come because Lexi had framed it as a way to minimize workplace disruption. Then the surprise guests started arriving. Patricia Brand walked in like she owned the place. She was a small woman with steel gray hair and the kind of presence that made everyone else in the room seem less important. She looked around the room until her eyes found Ethan. "Hello, darling," she said in a voice that could cut glass. Ethan went white. "Patty, what are you doing here?" "I was invited. Apparently we're all here to discuss your affair." Marcus Webb and Jennifer Chen arrived together, both looking confused and slightly annoyed. They'd agreed to come because I'd told them it was about Ethan's personal situation affecting the business. Mrs. Jarvis was the last to arrive, wearing her best dress and carrying a small notebook. She looked around the room like a theater critic reviewing opening night. "Well," she announced to no one in particular, "this should be interesting." I stood up and tapped my water glass with a knife. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is unusual, but I thought it was important that everyone involved in this situation had a chance to hear the truth." Lexi was looking around the room, finally realizing that this wasn't the friendly mediation she'd expected. "Derek, what is this?" "This is honesty, Lexi. Something we haven't had much of lately." I pulled out a folder and began distributing copies of documents. Hotel receipts, calendar entries, financial records, photographs of Ethan's car parked outside our building. "For the past 3 months," I said, "my wife has been having an affair with Ethan Brand. They've been using our joint credit cards to pay for hotel rooms, lying to friends and family to create alibis, and generally treating the people in their lives like props in their personal drama." The room erupted in conversations. Patricia was studying the photographs with the intensity of a forensic investigator. Marcus and Jennifer were looking at the financial records, their faces growing darker by the minute. "Derek," Lexi said, her voice shaking, "you can't just—" Actually, I can. See, you made one crucial mistake, Lexi. You assumed I'd be too hurt, too embarrassed, too weak to fight back. You thought you could manage this situation the way you manage everything else, with spin and manipulation and carefully crafted stories. Ms. Channing was reading through the hotel receipts. Lexi, these are charged to company credit cards. You told me these were client entertainment expenses. I can explain. No, I interrupted. No more explanations, no more lies, no more managing the narrative. I turned to address the room. Everyone here has been lied to, used, manipulated. Lexi used Simone as an alibi while carrying on her affair. She used Tom to spy on me and gather information. She used her company credit cards to fund her relationship with Ethan. I turned to Ethan, who was trying to make himself invisible in his chair. And Ethan, well, Ethan's been using everyone. Using Lexi for financial support, using his business partner's money for personal expenses, using his marriage as a safety net while he played around. Patricia Brand stood up slowly. Ethan, is this true? Patty, I can explain. Is this true? Ethan looked around the room like he was searching for an escape route. Some of it, but Patricia picked up her purse and walked over to him. For a moment, I thought she might slap him. Instead, she dropped a manila envelope on the table in front of him. Divorce papers, she said calmly. I'm taking the house, the investments, and half of whatever's left of your business. My lawyer will be in touch. She walked out without another word. Marcus Webb was next. Ethan, we need to talk. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., bring your lawyer. He and Jennifer left together, talking in low, angry voices. Ms. Channing was gathering up the papers I'd given her. Lexi, clear out your office. Security will escort you out in the morning. Ms. Channing, please, if you'll just let me explain. You used company resources to fund a personal affair. There's nothing to explain. She left, followed by most of the others. Within 10 minutes, the room had cleared except for me, Lexi, Ethan, and Mrs. Jarvis, who was taking notes in her little book. This is quite a story, Mrs. Jarvis said cheerfully. I'll have to tell the ladies at Bridge Club. She patted my arm as she walked past. You did good, dear. Sometimes people need to face consequences. Lexi and Ethan sat in stunned silence, the wreckage of their lives spread across the table in black and white documents. You destroyed us, Lexi said finally. No, I replied, standing up and putting on my coat. You destroyed yourselves. I just made sure everyone knew about it. I walked to the door, then turned back for one last look. My line is closed to you, I said. Both of you, permanently. I left them sitting in the empty dining room, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal and the consequences of their choices. Outside, the sun was setting over Boston Harbor, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. I walked to the waterfront and stood at the railing, watching the boats move slowly across the water. My phone buzzed with a text from Cal. How'd it go? I typed back. It's finished. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The weight of deception and betrayal that had been pressing down on me was gone, replaced by something lighter. Not happiness exactly, but the clean feeling that comes after a storm has passed. I walked home through the city streets, past the lights and noise of evening traffic, past the restaurants and bars where people were starting their nights out. Tomorrow I would begin the process of rebuilding my life, but tonight I was content to simply walk through my city as a free man. The apartment was quiet when I got home, but it was a good quiet, the silence of possibility rather than deception. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my chair, looking out at the lights of Boston spread below. My phone rang once more. Lexi's number. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail, then deleted the message without listening to it. My line was closed to her, forever.